Welcome to Bringing IP to Life. I'm Anna from Amanya IP and Amanya Design, and I'm joined by my guests to talk about IP. We're going to hear people's stories of their creativity, business, and entrepreneurship. Intellectual property can be a really dull subject until it becomes personal. This is aimed to help see the relevance of IP in everyday life. Welcome to the show. Welcome everybody to the Bringing Intellectual Property to Life show. I am Anna and I'm joined today by my youngest sister, Caroline Brewin, who has her own business called Brain Powered Coaching. So welcome, Kaz.
Thank you very much for having me, Anna.
You're very welcome. So today we're going to hear a little bit about Kaz's story into her entrepreneurship journey from corporate world and her new venture into publishing a book. She's been a guest publisher before now, but now she's done her own thing. So for those of you that have tuned in and aren't sure what intellectual property is, please go to show 1, where it will be explained to you, the first show called IP Horror Stories. And here's a little snippet of Kaz and my conversation today.
I literally woke up one morning and I thought, brain powered coaching. And, they say that your subconscious works on things overnight, even when you're asleep. And the first thing I did was go and check domain names.
Right,
because that was you can call your company anything you wish, really, but, the domain name is where people are going to go. So that's right. And the first thing I did was go to GoDaddy and was like, is this taken? And so the first thing I did was register, brain powered coaching. And then I trademarked it. So I trademarked the name.
So Kaz, tell us a little bit about, just a snippet about who you are and what you do and what's brought you to where you are now.
Sure. So my name is Caroline. I have moved from a corporate world in 2019. I spent 18 years in investment banking and worked in Sydney, Singapore, and in the UK. And spent lots of time doing kind of leadership roles, all sorts of different roles through the investment bank, including finishing up as a chief of staff for the technology and operations area. And I, through that, I guess if there was a couple of clear strings in terms of what I do is around clients and people, and always loved the people side of things. And so when I was in about 2012, I trained to be a professional coach. So I did that alongside my banking career, and basically ended up realizing that was the path that I wanted to go down. So in 2019, I left the investment banking world and started my business, Brain Powered Coaching. And I now run various different programs and trainings, and I'm writing my book, and do that for a global audience and predominantly corporates. But I also have online training as well, where I work with individuals and doing executive coaching too.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, being your sister, Kaz, I've watched your evolutionary journey over many years. For those of you that don't know our family, we're one of 4 siblings. Simon is a musician. Then there's myself. Then there's Nicola, who's a reverend, and she works in social justice and innovations in the housing crisis. And then there's Kaz, the youngest of the family. So our mum and our dad have been creative and entrepreneurial in what they've done. Dad was an engineer and an entrepreneur, and mum worked in the NHS, but she was pioneering in what she was doing in the areas of lung disease and allergies. So creative entrepreneurship is in our blood, is it not, Kaz?
It is, but I do remember Dad, because I was in the corporate world, he said, you're the only one in the whole family and previous family who's actually been able to stay in the corporate world. So I'm not quite sure what he thought when I then decided to go my own way. But Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, it's one of those things. It's that there's a benefit of having been in that world and kind of learning all the operational processes and controls and governance that then you can take into an entrepreneurial piece too. And I think that's where I've kind of benefited in terms of bringing it into building my business.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and COVID had a little bit of a part to play, didn't it? It kind of threw things spanner in the works and made you make that decision, didn't it? Which was
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd left banking, so I left in December 2019, and I knew that I kind of was done with the corporate world, and I kind of thought, well, I was going to take 6 months off and decide what I wanted to do,
yeah,
and that's what I promised myself. And because I had the coaching qualifications and had done that, it was something which I guess my intuition was that that was the path I would go down. But I didn't want to make a snap decision on it. So
mhm,
it was really kind of put my foot on the path, see how it goes. And I thought, you know what, I can always go back to corporate. COVID helped. I think I probably would have
yes,
made the same decision, but COVID
mhm,
helped because of what it meant was there was less pressure in terms of feeling like everyone else was racing off and in the corporate world because everyone was at home, and it meant that when
yeah.
I was doing all the research associated with building the company, there was nothing else to do anyway. So it was I wasn't distracted.
Yeah, because you've made the combination of confidence and brain power coaching, although you don't have a qualification in neuroscience, you've pulled that together with what you've done. So tell us the story behind how that happened.
Yeah, so I'm not a neuroscientist, but I have studied applied neuroscience. So, you know, I wouldn't be qualified to go and drill into someone's brain, but I worked and was trained under a gentleman called Professor Paul Brown, and he is an extraordinary man. Rest in peace. And he taught me a lot of what I use now and what I've brought into Brain Powered. The thing is that I have done so much training over the years. When you're part of a big corporate, you tend to get this amazing training. I was very lucky, but what I found was that I always struggled with that. It lacked the why. There was lots of what, but they lacked the substance. And I was always the annoying one in the classes saying, yes, but why do we behave like that? And it was then the neuroscience has made everything fit together. It's like a jigsaw. All of a sudden, things that I had questions around have just
Mhm,
made perfect sense. So that's why I have kind of integrated it in to
mm,
the coaching, because coaching it can be extremely powerful. And when you bolt the neuroscience side onto that as well, it just, you know, it's like rocket fuel. So
mm,
I think it's something which, certainly from a corporate perspective, people are analytical, people enjoy having some of that facts and data piece,
mhm,
rather than it just being just random facts. It's actually substance underneath it. So when I talk to people, I can say, okay, so what would your brain be doing right now? You know, this is negativity bias. This
mhm.
is why you're behaving like this. Now let's come up with a solution, and how can we help you navigate that?
Brilliant, brilliant. So in your course that you wrote, that you do for groups and stuff as well as for individuals, you were talking about all those skills and tools and everything that you'd learnt
Mm,
in the neuroscience space to help people with their area of confidence.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, for me, the way I approach things is how would I want it? And I have quite high standards, so I think that that's annoying for some, but for
Yeah,
me,
friends
that's
and
meant
family.
it's like, well, in that way, how do I bring that into what I deliver for other people? And
Mhm,
so the course is all of the research associated with it. I did lots and lots of research and continue to, because that's really important. Neuroscience is absolutely accelerating every day
mhm,
in terms of their understanding of the brain. And so I'm constantly making sure I'm up to date on what's the latest. And And so any of the training I do, people have all the research papers associated with it. And yeah, absolutely, it underpins everything, because then you can really trust it. And there are some really interesting things. For example, if someone has is rejected, so one of the things which we are as humans are terrified of, and our brain is very frightened of, is being of rejection. So not being part of a tribe, because that's a really crucial part in terms of how we are safe. So actually, there's a part of our brain which is actually painful to be excluded.
Right.
Now, probably most people, whether yourself, myself, or anyone watching or listening, have been part of that situation where people are picking teams, and
Okay.
and there's that, and everyone that starts getting picked around you, and you're left thinking, oh no, I'm going to be the last one.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's such a pain, like a horrible process, right? I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
makes me shudder thinking about it. Um, but that actually lights up the same areas of the brain associated with pain as physical pain.
Okay.
So interestingly, you can actually dampen that feeling of rejection through taking painkillers.
Right.
So when you have mental pain, you can have painkillers for it because it's similar areas of the brain. Now, something like that, people may say, well, that's utter nonsense. It's like, well, I can say, well, let me refer you to papers X, Y, and Z, because,
Hmm.
that's where it's shown up. So there's so many different things like that, which I think are really important for people to understand, because then once you understand it, you can then start using different levers to help you with your confidence.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So if somebody is struggling with confidence, you know, what are things that they can do? I mean, obviously you've got this course that you run, for people, and just talk us through how that works. If they were wanting to find out more about how to tackle it from your perspective, from the brain
Yeah.
powered perspective.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I can give you 3 tips for confidence. I can do that, and then in the course itself, there's a whole lot more. Um, but I think one of the biggest principles, which is really important to understand around confidence and neuroscience, is something called negativity bias, and that occurs because our brain naturally sees the negative. So if we think of 2 cavemen back from evolutionary days, one is on a sunbed sipping a pina colada,
Hmm.
and one is looking out for danger. Now, the one who survived, the saber-toothed tiger or the woolly mammoth, was the one who was more aware of what was going on.
Right.
The one who was sipping a pina colada in the sunshine, enjoying himself, got eaten
Hmm.
or killed. And
Yeah.
so through natural selection, basically, we have this negativity bias, which means we are constantly scanning for danger. Our brain has something called the amygdala, which is part of our limbic system, and it's 2 kind of almond shapes, kind of behind here. And that amygdala is like your brain's smoke alarm, and all the time it's looking for danger, looking for danger. And the thing about that is that we tend to overestimate the amount of danger.
Okay.
So although in the past it was actually real danger that existed, now your amygdala can fire up, even if it's something like office politics.
Okay.
Maybe your boss hasn't emailed you for a little while and you're a bit nervous and you're thinking, maybe I've done something wrong. Or you're thinking about, do I speak up in a meeting, or do I keep quiet because everyone's going to laugh at me?
Mm.
The thing is that we tend to assume that the worst is going to happen, and it's just
Right.
not true. And so, from a confidence perspective, if people can remember, what, is this really true? What's going to happen? Is my anticipation of the outcome of this action, is that really realistic? That everyone's going to laugh at me, I'm going to say something really stupid, and I'm going to get sacked.
Okay.
We tend to catastrophize so much, which means we hold back from taking really important steps. And what I tend to encourage people to do is do what I call micro confidence challenges. So if you're frightened of speaking up in a meeting, maybe just ask a question. And
Hmm.
what you'll find is actually it's fine. People might say, oh, great, thanks very much. And even if you don't ask the smartest question, no one will notice. And I
Mm.
think this is where we massively overestimate what everyone else is thinking about us. They're all thinking about themselves most of the time.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
thinking about what they said and, maybe what they're having for dinner or an argument they had earlier. But
Mm.
the difference is that that could be something which you contribute and contribute towards a really good solution. So
Mm.
the first thing I say is negativity bias.
Hmm.
Remember that. Um, the second thing, if you want to build your confidence, is celebrating your small wins.
Yeah.
And this is linked to negativity bias because um, we tend to forget. So if I asked you what were the great things you achieved last week, you'd probably have to have a think about it.
Hmm.
Whereas if I said, okay, what bad things happened to you last week? You'd probably, oh yeah, well, this, right? We
Right.
recall, which again is an adaptive response. Our brain think if there's something negative that's happened, it thinks, okay, I should remember that.
Hmm.
And it sears in our mind in a much more deeply if there's an emotional connection to it.
Hmm.
Whereas
Hmm.
actually remembering some good stuff we've done, it's not an adaptive response. And the thing is, if we don't think of the positive things that we've done, what happens is our brain kind of goes, well, hang on a minute, I put all this effort in and I achieved that good stuff, but I didn't get any credit for it.
Right.
So maybe I'm not enough. Maybe what I
Okay.
did isn't enough. And so your confidence drops. So if you can have a really simple practice, and I do it every Monday morning, I write out on a piece of card, what are my wins from the last week? And in
Mhm.
all honesty, I have to get out my diary and I look at things and I'm like, oh my goodness, I had that meeting with that person, or, and there'll be big things which are really good achievements that I would have just forgotten.
That's
And
good.
so I write down those wins and really consolidate them and think, great, like well done me.
Yeah.
And that actually, the more that you do that, the more that you gain confidence.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, because you, being the youngest of the family, you had all of us, pave the way for you, but you have always had an enormous amount of confidence. And is that ever something you've struggled with? Um, to me, it's something that you've had a lot more than I've had, and I've had to catch up. But is it something you've ever struggled with, having confidence?
Yeah. And I think this is what's interesting, right? I think it's uh, everyone looks at other people and assumes, right?
Hmm.
We when we look at we compare ourselves to others, and we often put ourselves, particularly entrepreneurs. Oh, I'm not as good as them. They've done so much better than me. Well, their starting point is entirely different.
Yeah.
So we're constantly comparing ourselves when we don't even know what's going on underneath. I
Yes.
spent a lot of my investment banking career with terrible imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
um, I guess that there was an element of me went, all right, well, fake it till you make it. You just just get out there and hope for the best.
Mm.
But that's where I think one of the things that people don't understand is a key attribute um, uh, of confidence is optimism
Hmm.
and belief in my ability to figure things out. That's the
Hmm.
definition of confidence from Brendan Burchard. Um, I guess what if I would look at it, I think I've kind of gone, well, look, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll just give it a go.
Hmm.
Um, and it was the same thing with starting a business. I kind of looked at and I thought, well, all right. So if you look at the millions, billions of people who have started businesses over the history of
Yes.
time, um, if they can do it, I must be able to at least try. And
Yes.
what's the risk? What's the downside? I
Hmm.
can always go back to my corporate world. Um, and I think this is coming back to that point around remember the negativity bias. Remember you think
Hmm.
it's going to be much worse than it is, and just give it a go.
Yes.
And I think it's from that place, even though you don't know everything, um, it can be a tremendous place to have a platform to move forward.
Yeah.
And then the third thing to help from a confidence perspective is to think of confidence as a muscle. Because ultimately, the more you use it, you need to go to the gym to use it, to grow that muscle. And, we've all got all sorts of negative voices, and, whether that's from our upbringing, teachers, parents, siblings, friends, whoever it is, who are the little voices going, you're not good enough, or you shouldn't be here. And so actually, you need to go to the gym to keep training that muscle. And the more you train it, the more confidence you will grow. And so that's why those micro confidence challenges, stepping outside of your comfort zone, even just a little bit, makes a really big difference.
That's great. That's great. So, Kaz, going into the area of intellectual property, you were learning about it as I was sort of discovering what I was doing, and I was sort of sharing things with you. So how did you put that sort of thing into the foundations of your business? Because I was sharing what I was creating as you were, creating your business plan and creating what you were doing. Did that have an impact on what the foundations were for your business now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the courses that you run are a great way that people can understand all the basics. So particularly as entrepreneurs, people, it's such a confusing world. And having someone who can translate that is incredibly helpful in really, simple to easy to understand language. So, yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I did, I was trying to think of the name of my business, and I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go to sleep, and when I wake up, I'm just going to let my brain mull over it. And I literally woke up one morning and I thought, brain powered coaching. And they say that your subconscious works on things overnight, even when you're asleep. And the first thing I did was go and check domain names, because that was like, I mean, you can call your company anything you wish, really, but the domain name is where people are going to go. So that's right. And the first thing I did was go to GoDaddy and was like, is this taken? And so the first thing I did was register, brain powered coaching, and then I trademarked it. So I trademarked the name. And that was one of the things which, when I was looking at how to do it, I think there's lots of fear in that around how to register a trademark. And I mean, it's expensive, right? If you pay someone to do it. Yeah, and I didn't have lots of money to have someone help me. So I was like, well, it can't be that hard. Again, there you go. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I thought I'd just give it a go. And I just went onto the government website, and I went through and looked at the different categories that I wanted to register in, and submitted through that. And yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is that the government people were really helpful. I forget the name of the
Intellectual Property Office.
Yeah, there you go. So they were really nice people, actually, very helpful. And so I wasn't sure if I was doing it right or wrong, but it wasn't that difficult. So I was doing it right. And so there were no problems. There was an issue with one of the courses I wanted to register. They said it was generally available language, which I'm not sure about. But that was something which I kind of accepted. But yeah, so the trademarking the name, that was the main thing that I did.
Yeah, because I mean, I come across stories and people's circumstances where they've not protected what they've created, and they've had to do a rebrand, or they've ended up getting sued. And that's a big thing. If you've built a business and built a name and built a reputation around what you've created, to start from scratch is a big thing.
If you'd like to know more about intellectual property or IP,
check out the Amanya IP website at www.amanyaipcourses.com. Courses vary from general basic understanding about IP for adults, young people and students, through to professional courses and courses for the USA market. The courses are aimed to help young people, students, designers, artists, business owners and entrepreneurs become IP smart to enable them to protect their dreams. My first trademark, made a whole load of mistakes that cost me a whole load of money, so I really had to redo it. So it's knowing what to do and what not to do, and that's one of the things I learned. And you're obviously, with the course creation and everything, you've been looking at copyright as an automatic right when you've created it to cover what you've been doing, haven't you? So and putting it at the bottom of your the things that you're creating to sort of let people know that you are aware of your intellectual property.
Yeah, exactly.
So Kaz, we're going to split this show into two parts, and tell us, before we go into part two, what's your key takeaway about what you would tell your younger self if you were talking to her about the career ahead or life in general? What would you say to her?
I would say be patient, because I'm not very patient, and enjoy the journey. I think it's so easy we all are constantly looking ahead, and the danger is that you miss it. And even yesterday, Monday morning, I was thinking, oh, I've got so much to do. And I was like, just enjoy it. Or sorry, even it's today. Goodness, I've been up for many hours today. Wow, that's frightening. And also, don't compare yourself, like I mentioned, to other people. When all your starting points are different, and you all got different challenges and different journeys you're taking. So be patient, enjoy it, and don't compare yourself.
Yeah, great tips. Thank you very much, Kaz, for part one. We will join you for part two, and please head over to her website if you want to hear what she's been doing and all the things that she's up to. It's www.brainpoweredcoaching.com, and we'll see you in the next part two. Thank you.
Thanks
for joining us on the show. Like, follow and subscribe to make sure you hear about what's coming up next. You can head over to the website www.amanyaipcourses.com to find out more. See you again soon.